Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and I decided in the past week and a half to watch every single Pixar movie, and today I'm going to be ranking all of them, all 22 movies in a list from worst to best. Comment below your list and check out my Onward review, which I just uploaded just this past weekend. Check out all these videos, so get ready guys for my rankings of all 22 Pixar movies, starting with number 22, which is Cars 2. The music is great. Besides that, it just seemed like Pixar really wanted to make a Cars 2, but also really wanted to make a super cool and slick spy movie, but they couldn't do both, so they kind of slammed it all together in one, and it just didn't really work out on either side, and they decided to make Mater the main character because they hate us. I don't know. They made the Jar Jar the main character of the movie, and that was a big mistake. At number 21 is A Bug's Life, and this is by no means a bad movie. I actually really like this movie. I think everything from this point on is a really good movie from Pixar. I think the only bad one they've done is Cars 2. It's an entertaining movie. I think the main storylines are fun, and the main character is fun. But some of the side characters with the circus kind of lame and kind of off. And the animation compared to the original Toy Story, which this came out I think 3 years after, is such an improvement. It's kind of cool seeing Pixar through watching all these movies in its release, how much they improved along the way. And I think the animation is great, and I think it still holds up. But I think this movie, in terms of all Pixar, is kind of more. It's definitely lower end. Like I said, it's number 21. It's good. It's not great. At number 20 is The Good Dinosaur, and at this point, Pixar is just showing off their animation. This movie came out a few years ago, and the environments are just incredible. As for the story, it's Lion King meets Finding Nemo meets The Jungle Book. It's not their most original movie, and it kind of suffers for that. And I think the character designs, it being more cartoony, I think it does work, but I get the complaints why it doesn't. I think it's a simple story told in a very simple way, and I think it's a perfectly fine, entertaining movie. It's just, like I said with Bug's Life, it's just not up to Pixar standards. At number 19 is Finding Dory, and I think this is a sequel that kind of feels unnecessary. It doesn't seem like, we needed a backstory for Dory, but what does work in this movie is Dory's storyline with Hank and with Destiny is very strong, and it's good. It just seems like Marlin and Nemo had no reason to be in this movie whatsoever. They had nothing to do. So a lot of the subplots feel like that. And I think the ending goes a little bit too far. I think the fact that an octopus is driving a car was a little less believable than toys driving a car in Toy Story 2. And I think at the end of the day, this movie just feels unnecessary. Although the animation is incredible, as it was with the first movie. This one, it just leaps and bounds better than Finding Nemo in terms of the technical aspects of the animation of the water and all that stuff. But besides that, I think this movie's, like I said, it's another, perfectly fine movie from Pixar. At number 18 is Brave, which is a movie that I never really sat down and watched the entire movie from beginning to end, although I have seen chunks of it a lot. But I think this movie is fine. It has a strong mother and daughter kind of bond throughout this movie that is kind of solved very fast, because the first half of this movie it takes a while to get going before you get to the bear, but once you get to the bear, it kind of montages pretty quickly, and then the bond is kind of fixed, and then the movie ends. And I think just overall it's a fine movie, but this is one of the first Pixar movies that made me forget that I was watching an animation because of how great the environments look and how the character designs are, and it all just kind of blended together, and I forgot that I was watching an animated movie. But, the story is, it's Brave. Number 17 is Cars 3, which is the Cars sequel I never knew I wanted. This movie surprised the hell out of me. I have never seen this movie up until this point. Like I said, I never saw Cars 2 until recently, and so I never cared to watch Cars 3, and it really surprised me. And I think what Pixar does great is they have really daring endings in it. The entire story with Cruz and with Lightning was great, and I think it really works. And I don't know, I wasn't expecting that from this movie. And the fact that Lightning quit halfway through the race at the end and let Cruz finish for him was a very, very brave choice. Again, no pun intended. It was a very brave choice for Pixar to do, and I think the ending was just really strong. At number 16, just barely better than Cars 3, is the original Cars. I think they're kind of back and forth in terms of the storylines, because I think they do hit at similar arcs, but the arc of Lightning McQueen in this movie is great, and it has he goes through a lot of change throughout this entire movie, and I think Mater doesn't annoy me in this movie, and I think he is actually kind of funny at some points. And I think that just the general concept of Cars is whack. It's weird to think about, what they are underneath, behind the eyes, what are they? How does this world work? They still take gasoline and all these different things, and they mention their motors, and they mention the brakes, and all these different things, and it's how does this world work? But, it's an entertaining movie, and it's pretty funny, and I don't know, it still holds up. At number 15 is the first Toy Story movie that we've seen on this list so far, and that is Toy Story 2, which is the worst of 4 great movies. That's right, they are, all four of them are great, and Toy Story 2 just happens to be the worst of all of them, but that doesn't mean this movie isn't great. From here on out, all these movies are great. So Toy Story 2 is a great movie with some great moments with Jessie and Woody and her backstory, or all these different funny moments with Zurg and Buzz and Rex. It just has all these funny. This is a very, very funny movie. It's kind of sillier than the first one was, and it does seem like, you if you've heard the story of how this movie started off as a straight to DVD movie and it kind of was transformed because it was too good for straight to DVD, it's exactly what it kind of feels like at times. But it doesn't mean that this isn't a great sequel with great characters, and it follows through very well, and the animation is leaps and bounds better than the original Toy Story, and I think it really, really makes a difference. At number 14 is the most underrated Pixar movie that they have ever made. Nobody talks about this movie enough. That is Monsters University. This movie has a great score. It has some of the funniest one-liner or just throwaway jokes, like the slug trying to run to his class, and at the end of the movie you see that he finally got to his class, but the school year is over and he has to run back home. It's really funny. There's a lot of really funny moments like that. It does kind of break continuity with the first Monsters Inc., but who cares? This is a fun college competition movie. That's kind of a strange idea that they took a competition college movie and they put in the Monsters Inc. world. Kind of like how they took a spy movie and put in Cars 2, but this one actually works very well, and this is a very, very entertaining movie. Like I said, the most underrated Pixar movie of all of them. This is a great movie, and I don't think people appreciate it nearly enough. At number 13 is the most recent Pixar movie to be released, and that is Onward. And spoilers for Onward. I'm going to talk about spoilers. I'm going to use this as my pseudo spoiler review. If you want to check out my non-spoiler review, I'll put the link up in the corner or down in the description. Or if you just want to hear more thoughts on Onward, it's going to be in that video. But this movie has a great and daring ending. The last 30 minutes of this movie really does improve the majority of the movie on second watch, and that's why I'm putting this so much higher on my list than I originally thought I would. That this movie, how it ends, and how you find out that Ian is kind of looks up to Barley as his dad, and you find out that when he's checking things off his list, and he's like, I did have a dad, but Barley never got a chance to. He only had a few memories, and how Ian gives up his chance to see his dad by the end of the movie so Barley could say goodbye. It is a beautiful, beautiful way to tell a story. It's an ending that I didn't think that if Disney made this movie, they would not have done that. I'll tell you that. They would have taken the safe way out. They both would have had their moments with the dad, and you would have actually seen the conversation that went on there. But you don't even get to see the conversation. You see it through a little hole, how Ian sees it, and you don't get to hear what he says or what Barley says to his dad. And it's a very touching story, and I love how the ending of this movie went, and I think the entire rest of the movie is a really great, fun adventure movie. But with that context, looking back at it and seeing this brother relationship form, I don't know, it makes the whole thing just work that much better. At number 12 is The Incredibles 2, and this is a slick, stylish, and exhilarating movie from Pixar, and I think it is the best animation I've ever seen in a movie, maybe next to Spider-Verse, but it has some of the best superhero action I've ever seen, even from live-action superhero movies. This movie has some of the best action I've ever seen. I think the only misstep is the villain is not as smart and clever as the first movie, and I think that if you watch the first Incredibles, he kind of makes fun of ways that this villain kind of monologues and does stuff like that, so it's not as clever in terms of that, but it follows through the characters that we loved from before so seamlessly, and the animation, I'm telling you, it's so good. At number 11 is a sequel that I didn't realize that I wanted, and that is Toy Story 4. After watching Toy Story 3, you think, just end there, that's it, that was the perfect ending. But if Toy Story 3 was the ending to Andy's story, Toy Story 4 is the perfect ending for Woody's story, and I think it's a beautiful ending when he decides to stay with Peep, or Bo Peep, and they have that goodbye on the awning, and it's so heartfelt, and this movie gets me just as emotionally as all the other Pixar movies. And Toy Story kills me in terms of the emotions every time. But this movie was emotionally impactful and has the best villain, I think, of the series, and with Gabby being so, empathetic, and you really feel for her and how she, decides to go to that one girl who was lost, and how they kind of form a bond in that moment, and it kind of deals with the purpose of a toy. And with Forky, it kind of deals with the existence of a toy to begin with. And I don't know, it's a very smart and clever and just beautifully animated movie that I didn't know that I wanted a nice little epilogue to the Toy Story franchise, but I'm glad we do. At number 10 is Up. I think the first 15 minutes, like everybody else says, is the best short film Pixar has ever made, and I think everything after that is just not perfect. It's great, it's just not perfect, and I think that's the only flaw I can really give this movie. But besides that, the musical score is one of the best Michael Giacchino has ever composed. I love the score for Up. I think he does a great job. And this is going to be, the first time, but not the last time I mentioned Michael Giacchino in this video. He is great. The animation is great. The storyline between Russell and, why am I forgetting his name? The kid. Or is Russell the kid? Honestly, I don't remember. I don't know. Up is great. That's all I have to say about that. The animation is beautiful. The score, yada yada yada. Up is incredible. If you have not seen Up, I don't know, check it out. Go see it. Watch it. At number 9 is Coco, which is a movie that gets better every single time I watch it. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this movie crawls up my list even further as the time goes on. This movie just gets better every time I watch it. I don't know. There's something about it that the music, again, Michael Giacchino with the score is incredible. And all the songs that they sing in this movie is incredible. And just the animation is gorgeous, and the style and the culture that they show in this movie is just so perfectly done. This movie is great. I love this movie. I think it really gets better on every single watch. I think it does kind of fall into the tropes that Pixar has, which is, having a villain or having a character that doesn't seem like the villain. At the end, it's revealed that they are the villain, and it kind of has that turn. Pixar does that a lot in almost every single one of these Pixar movies. If you watch it like I did, all back to back, you'll start to realize it. And I think that's maybe the biggest downfall of this movie, but that's a tried and true formula that they've been doing from the beginning, and it really works, and it really works in this one too. At number 8 is WALL-E, and you kind of forget that the first 40 minutes of this movie is all without dialogue. Maybe WALL-E says WALL-E a few times, and Eve says Eve a few times, but that's about it. Besides that, there's no dialogue for the vast majority of this movie, and when you do get dialogue, it works, and it's a really cool sci-fi romance movie that Pixar made that's incredibly unique. I don't really know any other movie that's like this movie, and I think this one as well gets better on every single watch. It's such an adult movie, it works perfectly for kids, but this is one of Pixar's first truly meant for adults, and it's such a universal story, and the love story in this movie is one of the best I've ever seen. At number 7 is probably the least talked about Pixar movie, and it's Ratatouille. This movie, why don't people talk about this movie as much? This is an incredibly beautifully animated movie with such a unique style, and just the way that it captures France and food in general, and how the story goes about, and the love story within that with Linguini. And it's just, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that's very unique when Remy is talking about the foods and how you can kind of hear them and the colors. It's really great. This is a beautifully animated movie, and I love this movie. At number 6 is the original Toy Story, the one that started it all, the first fully computer animated feature film that was ever made, started by Pixar, and that's probably why they're the best right now after all these years, because they were first. They started off and they killed it. This movie is so well written. All these smaller moments at the beginning of the movie, like the falling with style, how they kind of joke about it at the beginning of the movie, and at the end when Buzz says we're falling in style back to the car, all these smaller moments come back at the end in a full loop, and it's just, and how like the dog is introduced at the end and how Buzz is worried about it. This movie is so well written, one of the most unique stories, and I love how they went with toys, and they told this story of kind of like an older brother, getting a new little brother, and all the attention is kind of taken away from him and the jealousy of that. And that's really what this movie's about, and it has some adult jokes that goes right over kids' heads, but when you know what it is, and when you hear them as an adult, you're like, wow, how did I not realize that? How naive was I? I don't know, this movie's wonderfully written, and I'm so glad that this movie started off the journey that Pixar has been. At number 5 is Monsters, Inc., which is possibly the most original story that Pixar has ever done. I don't know, I can't think of any other movie that's even remotely near what this movie's about, because it's really about how, we see a spider, we're terrified of the spider, but that spider is probably just as terrified as us as we are of them, and I think they took that concept and built an entire world around it, and I think it works extremely well. I love the characters, I love the story between Sully and Boo. I think it's emotional at the end, it's very emotional at the end, and I think Randall is a very cool villain, and how it kind of explains away the abominable snowman and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster is very clever, and I think that's just what this movie is. It's a very clever, very well written, and very emotionally gratifying movie from Pixar. At number 4 is the original Incredibles, and I think the only negative thing I could say about this movie is the fact that they kind of went stylistically to make the beginning of the movie look kind of flat. The character designs are flat, that their house is flat, the workplace that Bob works at is flat. When they get to the island, it really pops and it explodes in color, and it's beautifully animated. But I think for the most part, it's kind of flat. But besides that, it's some of the best. Again, if Incredibles 2 has some of the best superhero action ever put to film, this movie did it first, and this movie has incredible action scenes. It's very exciting. It's very exhilarating. I've seen this movie countless number of times. It's very rewatchable. It has one of the best villains in a superhero movie, and it still, it dodges tropes that we're still getting today with superhero movies. And this movie came out in 2004. This movie is brilliant. At number 3, I have Inside Out, which is a movie that I still think about. I think about what are my emotions doing in my head right now? What core memories do I have? What are my personality islands? And one of my personality islands is movies, that's for sure. I don't know what my core memory would be for movies. I'm not sure. It's just such an interesting concept to think about. I don't know. I love Inside Out. It's one of my favorite original Pixar movies that they have ever done. It is very clever. It is very emotional at the end, and it's a wonderful story about how this girl, after moving to a new place, has kind of lost who she was as a child, and this is her coming of age story, and how she is going to lose those aspects of her personality from when she was a kid. But she's always going to have that in that island that combines at the end of the movie when she grows up in the future. And you'll always have that part of you as you grow up, and you'll never lose that. And the family aspect of this movie is just incredible. And how they go into different characters' heads, like the mom and dad, or the cats or the dogs. It's really funny. This movie is very clever. At number 2 is Finding Nemo. And this movie I've probably watched even more times than The Incredibles. This movie is incredible. It's a great journey about how a father will do anything to get to his son, and how he kind of gets out of his own comfort zone, dealing with the sharks and the sea turtles, and how Nemo gets out of his own comfort zone, and kind of the coming of age story for Nemo with all the other fish in the tanks and all these different things, the dentist, Darla, all these different storylines, all these subplots, they all work so well. And Dory is great in this movie. She's great comedic relief, and the bond that she has with Marlin is great. Everything about this movie works. This movie is so incredible. I love this movie so much more, especially when I watched it just recently. I forgot how incredible this movie really is. And it's just, I love Finding Nemo. There's just one other movie it just happens to be my top 5 of all time, and Finding Nemo might just be my number 6, so it doesn't quite reach that. At number 1, you see the poster right there. That is Toy Story 3, one of the best films ever made, in my opinion. It's in my top 5 of all time. This movie gets me emotionally. It crushes me. Every time I hear the music, I start to tear up. Every time I think of Andy giving away Woody to Bonnie, I tear up. That scene is so sad. And when they're all about to go into burning, fiery death, and they're all holding hands, who didn't get emotional at that part? Are you kidding me? Pixar just... What in the world are they doing to my emotions? The fact that this is a crazy prison break movie that takes place in a daycare, that's incredible. And the whole thing they do with Buzz and the Spanish settings, this movie is wickedly funny. The tortilla head, Mr. Tortilla Head, is very funny, and the bird attacking him. Everything with Ken and Barbie is extremely funny. Lotso, I think, is not the best villain of the series, but he's a very different villain than Gabby was, where this villain is not necessarily as empathetic. You do feel for this villain, but this villain has no turning point. There's no redemption for this character because he's too far gone, as Woody says. And it's just... This movie is perfect from beginning to end. I love everything about this. The only thing that's missing is Bo Peep. But we got that in Toy Story 4, which is kind of why I'm glad that movie happened. So that is my rankings of all 22 Pixar movies. Comment below what you guys think are your top 22 Pixar movies. Which one's at the bottom? I think we were all going to say Cars 2, if you've even seen Cars 2. Because I had just watched it for the first time. I just watched Cars 3, and now I've seen every single Pixar movie from beginning to end, all in the past week and a half. And it was kind of interesting watching them all in terms of release, because you see how the formula has kind of been brought from every single film, starting I think with Toy Story 2 is the first one that has that Pixar formula of having the villain kind of seeming like the good guy first, and then it's revealed that he's a bad guy. It happens in Toy Story 2, it happens in Coco, it happens in a bunch of different Pixar movies. It's a formula that still works extremely well, and I think Onward is yet another great Pixar movie, and I can't wait for Soul. I guarantee you that both Soul and Tenet are going to be my top 2 movies of this year. I haven't seen either of them yet, but I just know one of those 2 is going to be my number 1. I have a feeling it might just be Soul. So thanks guys for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos just like this one, and comment below what you think I should rank next. So that's going to be it. Subscribe to the channel, and make sure you guys are here for my next one.